Singing flags in river of molds of winter's love. Incense burning love rituals, weaving heart into the ceremony of love, singing flags and river of molds of winter love. Dedicated to the sun and beingness, bringing together with loving vibration, with loving vibrations during the winter season. Grinding together love's ingredients to raise happiness and joy, opening our hearts to love and light. Junipers cleansing and purifying. As is frankincense, sanctifying and blessing, to connect us to the love goddess. Singing flights and river golds a winter love. To build an abundant consciousness. Where flows draw lovers closer, a cinnamon brings passionate nature. So is tomorrow's song. Weaving part into the ceremony of love, incense burning love ritual, singing flights in river dark folds of winter's love. The Palmarosa, scented grass of India, permeating the winter love ritual. So and storage, the binding ingredient, cleansing and protecting, to symbolize eternal life. Live long in prosperity and fertility. These are the ingredients, bringing together with love vibrations during the winter season. Singing flies in river dark molds of winter love. I'm Jeremy, the quack of mad scientist duck. Little song called These Onions Really Whack Me Up. These onions and really whack me up. These onions and really whack me up. If my calculations are correct, we should ride the sky like we ride the river. We should, on a serious note, be told a universal truth. The land and the waters are all at home, technically speaking. A duck dive is a duck dive, although technically speaking, a wave is a wave and a rapid is a rapid. And water sports, brothers and sisters, are water sports. Although different. Does make different, like me. If something were that likely, it would be that likely. If different were different, it would be that likely. If something were that likely, don't you agree? Oddly enough, it seemed like something would be that likely. All I need is the snusna, the sillishness, and the awkwardness, and the craziness. That really cracks me up. Sillishness, a little craziness, sensualness, gotta have that stuff. He's underneath that really wake me up. 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 If my calculations are correct, we should ride the sky like we ride the river. If my calculations are correct, we should ride the river like we ride the sky. On a serious note, seriously, on a serious note, a duck dive is technically a duck dive, whether it's on a river or on an ocean. Technically speaking, a wave is a wave and a rapid is a rapid. And water sports brothers and sisters are water sports brothers and sisters. Different makes different, like me. If something were different like me, it would be that likely that something likely would be something likely different like me, likely speaking. All the same, different. It takes different to make different. These are things that really crack me up. These are things that really wake me up. These are things that really wake me up. Suddenly out of nowhere, I wonder if I will turn into a prince, like Bookworm and Jeremy after their Lady River kisses me. Oh, smoochy, smoochy, smoochy. There's only a paper moon hanging over a cardboard sea, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. There's only a paper moon. There's only a paper moon hanging over a cardboard sea, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. So it's only a paper moon hanging over a cardboard sea, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. Say it's only a canvas sky sailing over a muslin tree, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. Your love is like a honky-tonk parade. Your love is like a honky-tonk parade. Without your love, it's a melody played on a penny arcade. It's a Barnum and Bailey world, just as funny as it can be. But it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. Without your love, it's a honky-tonk parade. Without your love, it's a melody played in a penny arcade. It's a Barnum and Bailey world, just as funny as it can be. But it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. Into Johnny the Blackfoot mad scientist dog. Into Jeremy the Blackfoot mad scientist dog. They're putting chemicals in our water. The plywood mill, the lumber mill, the paper mill. They're putting chemicals in the water. I see the good in all. Thank you for the river bones you made for us in the plywood mills. I see the good, you serve the people well. You work a long day, hard day. Brother Beaver, will you put a retaining wall between the cannibals and the water? Will you help us in the river? These are the things that really whack me up. They're putting chemicals in the water. Brother, please, can you help me clean it up? Today I would like to read a section out of From the Hearts of Men. An intimate look at the thoughts and feelings of men about fatherhood, sex, women in competition, war, and more. Author Yevra Ornstein. I'm not going to read the whole thing, obviously, but I do have some that I feel are relevant to the sport of riverboarding. Chapter 5, for instance, Competition and Cooperation, The Male Dilemma, written by Yevra Ornstein, yet again. The Peace Corps' advertisement goes, "It's the toughest job you'll ever love." After I returned from Ecuador, I saw one of these ads on TV again. It was Instantaneous Time, Crunch, as I recalled so vividly how I felt seeing it before I had gone. I had a naive, romantic notion about what the Peace Corps would be like. And now that I had done it, it was interesting to compare the vision with the reality. The fairest way to advertise the Peace Corps would be to include, "It's the toughest job you'll ever love and hate." In all honesty, I don't think I knew a single American down there who didn't go through his or her periodic bout of loathing the country, its people, and the Latino culture. Then there were scores of experiences, and more times than I could remember, when these people were even more delicious than New York cheesecake. And that's a tall order. The clash between idealistic, highly motivated, dedicated volunteers and the Ecuadorian culture and bureaucracy was very intense. It is a mixture that is inevitably inherently fraught with difficulties and static, and results in lots of Americans packing their bags. In many ways, it was as if we or they were raised on a distant planet, far from the reaches of another galaxy, one that barely resembled Earth as we know it. After I had been in the country for a year and a half, a friend from the States came down to visit. By that time, I had worked on 2 schools, one in the mountains, the Andes run down the central portion of the country, and one in the jungle. I was then living and working on the coast, visiting communities, doing evaluations, and choosing sites for future schools. My time was my own to arrange, and with my being considerably ahead of schedule, I decided to take a few weeks off, show her my favorite sites, and then fly out to the Galapagos Islands, which I hadn't yet seen. Half of the beauty of the Galapagos is underwater. It's the clearest ocean and the most varied and abundant sea life I've ever seen anywhere. The water temperature is ideal, warm enough so that you can stay in for hours, and cool enough to be refreshing. Often you'll be accompanied by as many as 15 to 20 seals who are a curious, playful bunch, and who love to swim at you and then veer off at the last second. It's their version of tag, and they're so quick and graceful that it was rare indeed that I couldn't touch them as they accelerate past me. Like all animals in the Galapagos, they're completely harmless and intend no malice towards humans. The most magical aspect of the Galapagos is that the animals have no fear of man. Perhaps this is because they are no longer hunted. I don't know, but what I know is that these islands have the most balanced, harmonious feeling of any place I've ever been to. There's a quality to this feeling that is palpable, intangible, and extraordinarily soothing. You can sit next to blue or red-footed boobies, and they don't fly away. Boobies. You can sit next to, okay, yes, repeat the boobies part. You can sit next to blue or red-footed boobies and they don't fly away.
You can sit next to seals and they'll go back to sleep or their beloved sunbathing, or you can perch atop a cliff beside a bizarre-looking iguana and share a splendid sunset. Do you have any idea how amazing this is? One of my most precious memories is walking on a pure white sand beach, polka-dotted by hundreds of seals. The entire sandbar was blanketed with sunbathing seals. I sat down next to a pup and her mother. The mother was fast asleep, and the pup was totally open and curious about this visitor, this creature, that had sat down next to it. As the pup fearlessly rose to its front flippers, I got on all fours. We were now on eye level, and about 3 feet from one another. I slowly began to lean towards him and her, and she, to my surprise, began to do the same. After a minute or so, I slowly inching towards one another, got a load of this. We were actually touching noses. There I was, eye to eye, touching noses with a baby seal, looking straight into those wonderful big brown eyes, thinking to myself, I can't believe this is happening. And then all of a sudden, Mom woke up. Mom reacted to the news the way my dad did to go into the Peace Corps. Major upset, instantaneously, honking and squawking and mobilized to defend her baby. She scared the piss out of me. I jumped back in several feet. When it came to fight or flight, my adrenaline went right to my legs. I translated seal speak real fast and moved away begrudgingly, thinking what a mood destroyer she turned out to be. And yeah, I understood nonetheless. My Galapagos experience showed me something so new and special that it changed some beliefs I had held. For as far back as I can remember, perhaps 7 or 8 years before my visit to the islands, I had read something I found quite fascinating and very different from my own perspective. I used to wonder why nature was cruel, and the ways in which life was perpetuated. It seemed to me that for all its extraordinary brilliance and intelligence, it was possible and preferable to sustain life in other ways. Why did life have to be predicted upon the killing and eating of other life forms? It seemed totally plausible and within the vast realm of alternative possibilities that nature life could be put together in other ways. I thought this way of life sustaining itself to be inherently cruel. I felt sorry for animals that were victims of the hunt, the losers in the struggle for life. Cats stalking mice, apparently for the sheer fun of it, not necessarily for the food of it, seemed like a malicious way to get one's kicks. I have always had a very strong feeling of kinship and appreciation for animals. I just couldn't fathom or accept this aspect of the natural order of things. What I read radically changed my views on the subject. The author spoke of the animal's innate wisdom and awareness of immortality. The animal's understanding of natural guilt, as manifested, is not being gluttonous. Their innate memory of having been both prey and hunter, and their natural sense of fairness and balance, the idea of a mother eating her young as a supreme act of love was certainly a radical perspective. The author went on to say in regards to this that the mother is totally aware, intuitively in regards to this, that the mother is totally aware of what the environment is capable of supporting in terms of value, fulfillment, and if the environment isn't capable of supporting a life, of quality, the mother will, as an act of love and letting go, eat her offspring. To put it mildly, this was an entirely different worldview than the one I had known, been taught, accepted, and believed in. I must say that when I read this on a gut level, I recognize, sense in some vague yet distinct familiar way, something that said, yes, this is true. This is the way it is. Although there was nothing in my experience to confirm these ideas, there was nothing within my experience that said they weren't true either. So I let them sit there, simply maintaining a position of openness to the possibility of these ideas being so. The essence of what I was reading spoke of the cooperative nature of life, in contrast to the competitive survival of the species version handed down to us by Darwin. Ironically, my feelings occurred in the Galapagos, where Darwin had done this research and had formulated his survival of the species theory of evolution. It was amazing to me that our experiences were so vastly divergent, for it was here that I came to know firsthand, directly in a total kind of way that transcends knowing something mentally, that nature truly is predicted upon cooperation and not competition, as Darwin believed. I had a profound sense and experience of the interconnectedness of the abundant life that surrounded me. As I watched enormous pelicans plummet down from the skies to feed their voracious appetites, I was struck with the knowingness that life is eternal and that what I was witnessing was a transformation of form from one animal to another. And yet the basic essence, the soulness of life, is inviolate and indestructible. I knew intuitively that all the life forms living on these islands partake willfully of this dance. They contribute to the sustaining of all life by giving of this dance. They contribute to the sustaining of all life by giving of themselves to the benefit of the life of others. I understood and felt viscerally that the animals know far more than we do in this way. This is an ancient wisdom buried deep within our body, mind, and spirit, but we have forgotten that, which at some other level we know to be so. I watched an iguana and a snake fight to the death. In the past, I would have been saddened by the conquest, the seeming destruction and loss of life. As I watched this battle, I knew that life is circular, which freed me up to watch this contest with total fascination and no pity. In the end, the snake had a paralyzing grip on the iguana, and I was mesmerized as it unhinged its jaw and slowly began to eat it. Some 20 or 30 minutes later, it was gone. Now you see it, now you don't. Iguana undergoing transition into snakehood. While its soul essence was now independent of its union with matter, physical form, I thought about the struggle, or more appropriately, the desire and value of life, which is innate to all beings, and realized that there was no contradiction. Obviously, all life has a basic instinct to survive, and yet beyond this most basic of drives, there are other dimensions of awareness and consciousness. Value, fulfillment, quality of life, the immortality of the soul, innate wisdom, and love are realities that extend beyond the apparent illusion of survival, of the fittest. That which had been an abstract concept was now something I knew viscerally. The quality, the vibes, I really don't know the words to describe it. The feeling that permeates the Galapagos is tangible in its own way. I had never experienced this ambiance anywhere else in all my travels. I knew a door had opened into the true nature of the vastness of life supporting life. An opening that radically changed previously held attitudes and ideas. This is the magic of the Galapagos. I have dwelled on this subject because competition is a major theme in male acculturation and male conditioning. It is woven in and through. It permeates and colors our concepts of manhood. It is one of the predominant themes we have to deal with in our development as men. Many of the articles, stories, and excerpts in this book touch upon competition in one way or another. We do accept it in too many unquestioning ways. The necessity, the inevitability, and the reality of competition. This is part of our orthodox way of thinking. We accept that competition is an innate aspect of nature, rather than question whether it is a screen of human invention. that we have placed upon the world and ourselves. The following is an excerpt from the interview by Beth Ashley, published by the Independent Journal at Marin County, California newspaper, August 21st, 1984. In this interview, I applied some of the things I learned from my time in the Galapagos, men's issues, and men's lives. Men see themselves as aggressive and competitive by nature. We subscribe to the Darwinian theory of the survival of the fittest. I don't know about you, but it sure as hell didn't come across as a theory to me. It was more like a scientific gospel. Darwin left us a tragic legacy that equates evolution and human nature with a murderous intent competition in the way the species advances itself. This is the antithesis of viewing nature and ourselves embarked upon a vast and intricate journey towards greater fulfillment, whose flowering is intimately tied to social, political, and ecological balance, harmony, interdependence, global community, and cooperation. This latter, alternate view moves us to change of perception and feeling about the purpose and meaning of life from survival to value fulfillment, quality, and beauty. Darwin's theory is a reworking of the Judeo-Christian dogma into a scientific lexicon, a translation of his own religious and cultural heritage. Science emerged as the new religion and the new priesthood. The same old oppressive baggage in new clothing. Darwin's social, political, and religious heritage defined, shaped, and molded his perspective. This was his filter, his lens, and it was this selective awareness that focused upon, picked out, and the outermost appearances and confirmed what he already believed and had been trained to accept as the reality of nature. The consequences of this, of our cultural views of ourselves and our world, are tragic and life-threatening in many ways. Masculine energy is concentrated on and coupled to that aggressive mentality, which on the dark side gives us the license to dominate women and rape the environment. The following excerpts come from a philosophy that has been of singular significance in my life. I've exerted material that can profoundly addresses and challenges our conventionality held ideas about competition, cooperation, and nature. I hope you do too. Find it provocative and stirring. On the limitations of self. The beliefs of Darwin and Freud alike have formed to create an experience is accepted and perceived only as it is sieved through that screen. If Christendom saw man as blighted by original sin, Darwinian and Freudian views see him as part of a flawed species in which individual life rests precariously ever at the beck and call of the species' needs, and with survival as the prime goal. A survival, however, without meaning, the psyche's grandeur is ignored, and the individual's sense of belonging with nature is eroded. For it is at nature's expense, it seems, that he must survive. One's greatest dreams and worst fears alike become the result of glandular imbalance or of neuroses from childhood traumas. Survival of the human species, as it has developed, is a matter of belief far from that it is understood. For certain beliefs are now built in. They become biologically permanent and transmitted. I mean here the transmission of beliefs into physical codes that then become biological clues. If women have felt their biological survival depended upon the cultivation of certain attributes over others, for instance, then this information becomes chromosome data, as a vital to the development of the new organism, as any other physical data involving cellular structure. In other words, conscious attitudes eventually manifest as genetic alterations. The mother also provides the same kind of information to male offspring. The father contributes his share in each case over the generations, then certain characteristics appear to be quite naturally male or female. And these will vary to some extent according to the civilizations and world conditions. Each individually is highly unique. However so, these models for behavior will vary. They can indeed be changed in a generation. For the experience of each person alters the original information. This provides leeway that is important. In your terms, the psyche is the repository of characteristics that operate in union, composed of female and male elements. The human psyche contains such patterns that can be put together in multitudinous ways. You have categorized human abilities so that it seems that you are men or women and men primarily, and persons secondarily. Your personhood exists first, however, your individuality gives meaning to your sex, and not the other way around. In direct opposition to current theories about the past, there was far less sexual specialization, say in the time of the cavemen, than now. The family was a cooperative union. The basis of early society was cooperation, not competition. Family grouped together. There were children of various ages in such a band all the time. When women were near birth, they performed those chores that could be done in the cave dwellings or nearby, and also watched over other young children, while the women who were not pregnant were off with the males, hunting or gathering food. If a mother died, the father took over her responsibilities, the qualities of love and affection being quite as alive in him as in the female. After a woman bore, she nursed the child, taking it with her on food gathering excursions, or sometimes letting other women in the group nurse the child. Often after childbirth, women soon joined the hunting expeditions, and the fathers made clothing from animals' hides at home. This allowed the male to rest from the prolonged hunting activity, and meant that no adult member of the family became overexhausted. The work then was interchangeable. Children began food gathering and hunting as soon as they were able to. Females, as well as males, led by the older children, going farther away as they progressed in strength. Qualities of inventiveness, curiosity, ingenuity could not be delegated to one sex alone. The species could not have survived such a division. Darwin spent his last years proving it. His theory of evolution, and yet it has no real validity. It has a validity within very limited perspectives only, for consciousness does indeed evolve form. Form does not evolve consciousness. All consciousness does indeed exist at once, and therefore it did not evolve in those terms. It is according to when you come into the picture and what you choose to observe, and what part of the play you decide to observe. It is more the other way around, in that evolved consciousness forms itself into many different patterns and rains down on reality. Consciousness did not come from atoms and molecules scattered by chance through the universe. Consciousness did not arrive because inert matter suddenly soared into activity and song. The consciousness existed first and evolved the form into which it then began to manifest itself. Now, if you had all been really paying attention to what I have been saying for some time about the simultaneous nature of time and existence, then you would have known that the theory of evolution is as beautiful a tale as the theory of biblical creation. Both are quite handy, and both are methods of telling stories, and both might seem to agree within their own systems, and yet in larger respects they cannot be realities. No, no form of matter, however potent, will be self-evolved into consciousness. No matter what other bits of matter are added to it. Without the consciousness, the matter would not be there in the universe, floating around, waiting for another component to give it reality, consciousness, existence, or song. I have told you often that you do yourselves a grave injustice by limiting your conception of the self. Your sense of identity, freedom, power, and love would be immeasurably enhanced if you could understand that what you are does not end at the boundaries of your skin, but continues outward through the physical environment that seems to be impersonal or not self. Biologically, it should be easy to understand that you are physically a part of Earth and everything within it. You are made of the same elements. You breathe the same air. You cannot hold the air that you take within you and then say, "This is myself fulfilled with this air. I will not let it go." Or you would find out very quickly that you are not nearly so independent from the air. You are biologically connected, chemically connected with the earth that you know. But since it is also formed naturally and spontaneously from your own collective projected psychic energy, since you and the seasons even have a psychic interaction, then the self must be understood in a far greater context. Such a context would allow you to share in life experiences of many other forms, to follow patterns of energy and emotion of which you barely conceive, and to sense a world consciousness in which you have your own independent part. For now, think of it, evolution, as you usually do, in a time context. It has been fashionable in the past to believe that each species was oriented selfishly toward its own survival. Each was seen in competition with all other species. In that framework, cooperation was simply a byproduct of a primary drive toward survival. One species might use another, for instance. Species were thought to change and mutants form because of the previous alterations in the environment, to which any given species had to adjust or disappear. The motivating power was always projected outside. All of this presented quite an erroneous picture. Physically speaking, Earth itself has its own kind of gestalt consciousness. If you must, then think of that Earth consciousness as grading upon in great slopes of awareness from relativity, inert particles of dust and stone through the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms. If then, even then, remember that those kingdoms are not so separate after all. Each one is highly related to each of the others. Nothing happens in one such kingdom that does not affect the other. A great gracious cooperation exists between those seemingly separate systems. However, if you will remember that even atoms and molecules have consciousness, then it will be easier for you to understand that there is indeed a certain kind of awareness that unites these kingdoms. In your terms, consciousness of self did not develop because of any exterior circumstances in which your species won out, so to speak. In fact, that consciousness of self in any person is dependent upon the constant, miraculous cooperations that exist between the mineral, vegetable, and animal worlds. The inner intent always forms any exterior alteration. This applies on any scale you use. Consciousness forms the environment. The environment itself is conscious. Atoms and molecules themselves operate in their own fields of probabilities. In their own ways, they yearn toward all probable developments. When they form living creatures, they become a physical basis for specific or species alteration. The body's adaptability is not simply an adjusting mechanism or quality. The cells have inner capabilities that you have not discovered. They contain within themselves a memory of all the previous forms they have been a part of. The fact is that the so-called process of evolution is highly dependent upon the cooperative tendencies inherent in all properties of life and in all species. If we must speak in terms of continuity, which I regret, then in those terms you could say that life in the physical universe on your planet began spontaneously in a given number of species at the same time. In those terms, there was a point where consciousness, through intent, impressed itself into matter. The breakthrough cannot be logically explained, but only compared to, say, an illumination. That is, a light occurring everywhere at once, that became a medium for life as you define it. It had nothing to do with the propensity of certain kinds of cells to reproduce. All cells are imbued with the drive for value fulfillment, but with an overall illumination that set the conditions in which life was possible as you think of it, and at the imaginary hypothetical point all species became latent. The inner pulsations of the invisible universe reached certain intensities that impregnated the entire physical system simultaneously. That illumination was everywhere, then at every point, aware of itself and the conditions formed by its presence. However, as you begin to question the nature of time itself, then the when of the universe is beside the point. The motion and energy of the universe still come from within. I certainly realize this is hardly a scientific statement, yet the moment all that is conceived of a physical system, it was invisibly created, endowed with creativity, and bound to emerge into physical reality. There is a design and a designer, but they are so combined, the one within the other, the one within and the one without, that it is impossible to separate them. The Creator is within its creations, and the creations themselves are gifted with creativity. The world comes to know itself, to discover itself, for the planner left room for divine surprise, and the plan is nowhere foreordained. Nor is that anywhere within it anything that corresponds to your survival of the fittest theories. A quote by Woody Allen. I have an intense desire to return to the womb. Anybody's. Thank you, Woody Allen. Excellent suggestion.
Hi, I'm Busy with the Body, Jeremy the Beaver. Busy has always been the alternative. Happier than a frog in spring, busy is better than the alternative, busier than a bee in a flower garden. Alright, so let's be getting busy, getting down with the sales, getting down with the bad sales. Let's be getting busy now, alright. Oh damn, we can't hold back or we'll be damned ourselves. How else would the people have a place to live about you or below you if we don't build a dam for the damned? Hold high the funeral pyre, raise the light and a river of desire. Flowing through Mother Nature, we are all food and clothing to one another. In a dog-eat-dog world, dam up the days and hold back the hours. Let it all hang out. Let us dance around like the damned until we explode with pleasure upriver. Or else we're a brother rat trap in a labyrinth of city walls. Let's rise up and down the damned. I'll stretch it all the way back. Comes right back. See how it wiggles like that? It's like a boomerang, yeah, exactly. It doesn't sink. They ride it all winter without having to dive down and get a head freeze. Yeah, I had to figure out how to get around the head freeze.
You are hardcore. That is gorgeous.
More sunlight with the leaves off the trees. Yeah, I clipped some of them. Yeah. Need one of those cutter poles. Today I want to read another chapter from The Hearts of Men by Yevra Ornston. Still on the sports thing, the contemporary initiation to manhood by Yevra Ornston. There was a time when I was obsessed with one focus, surfing. I took to the sport with a passion in my early teens, surfed every chance I got, and after one summer my love of it coerced me into buying a wetsuit so I could do it year-round. In those days, surfboards were enormous clunkers. Nonetheless, I was in hog heaven in the ocean, my second home, speed, thrills, sun, and pure exuberance. Growing up by and in the ocean turns your blood into part seawater, and it never ever gets out of your system. I can relate to that with rivers. The second winter came, and Lewis, my surfing soulmate, and I bought wetsuits. Back then, what we used for protection against the frigid waters and 10 to 40 degree air temperatures were diving suits.
They were of similar ilk as the first fiberglass boards, thick and clumsy, but they worked. Paddling was like having some clown on your back pulling your arms back as you paddled forwards, gleefully, cynically hissing, "You sure you want to be doing this?" "That's right, you son of a bitch, I do want to be doing this." The compensation was the extra work generated lots of body heat. Amen, brother. I remember that the first time Lewis and I suited up, we lugged out boards and suits down to the beach and stripped down to our bathing suits to begin the arduous task of putting these things on. There were pre-nylon days. About a third of the way into the ritual, I turned around and saw a handful of people on the boardwalk staring at us incredulously. "Hey, Lewis, turn around," we laughed. "No, we must have looked really strange." Part human, part seal, echoes of Kafka's Metamorphosis. No doubt, this weird sight was heightened by the snow on the beach and the imminent prospect of more to come. Now, surfing was heaven for me. Unlike the more masculine sports, there were no human adversaries, no one to beat up, and no one to beat up on you, other than the waves. So in many ways, surfing is a solitary sport, and the challenge is a private contest, and a personal joy, and a feeling of accomplishment. I have two older brothers, both of whom were superlative athletes. My mom was a tomboy, and Dad played handball, rode horses like an expert, and played lacrosse at City College of New York. In time, I began to realize that surfing wasn't quite gladiatorial enough. I was expected to do battle with humans, you see. Competitive contact sports where the golden fleece lay, and although I was mostly content feeling of inadequacy and wimphood began to creep into my little haven. The pressure was unspoken, often transmitted by way of example. One brother was a wrestler and the other was a football player. I loved to play touch football, which to this day I still maintain requires greater agility and is a whole lot more fun than tackle football. It's more difficult to avoid simply being touched than to dodge being jumped on, usually with the intent to do you bodily harm. I suited up one day in a junior high school tackle football. It was time to play a man sport. So there I am, out there sweating my ass off with a group of for the most part, equally freaked out kids who have also caved into the pressure. I don't think there were many of us out there for the love of the game. Probably 3/4 of the kids were likewise putting their bodies and their future on the line to get Dad's approval, or brothers or friends. I hated it. It totally sucked. If you've ever been on JV, junior varsity team, you know what the total chaos it is. The name of the game is definitely not about skill, for that hasn't yet been developed. That leaves brute force to compensate for the lack of ability, grace, and teamwork, which hopefully begin to mature with practice and experience. What also reigns supreme is confusion from leader of the pack jockeying, which begins to make itself known early on. I remember this Neanderthal on the sidelines, known as Coach, screaming his brains out at us. "Hit the deck, I want 50 push-ups, then I want 75 sit-ups, and then we're going to run wind sprints, and then we're going to do it again, and then again, and again." Do you know what a drag it is to do this stuff with helmet, shoulder pads, and hip pads, and those sexy football pants with thigh pads, shin pads, and a cup on? It shits. The theory is that intimidation, along with the workout, would whip us right into shape, shades of a pre-military training. Back then, there were lots of torn muscles in the beginning of the season. Stretching, gradually working our way into shape was not part of the game plan. I guess that was the coach's way of weeding out the boys from the men. I remember standing in a row on the goal line and one of the kids pissing in his pants out of fear. Nervousness. or whatever urine running down his leg, and him just standing there, staring straight ahead. While many of us saw what happened, we turned away in embarrassment. You can bet your ass that's one hell of a humiliating memory to live with. Well, all it took was one day of this crap and I was history. Back in the locker room, after one of the more unpleasant days of my life, I was thinking, hey, I really love to play football, but this sure as hell ain't my idea of a good time. It's back to touch football for me. I hated being encumbered by all that equipment, the jock mentality of the whole scene, and the coach being the asshole he was. Adios, tackle football. I did enjoy playing tackle football with my friends, but only in two ways, both of which left us intact. One was in the snow and the other was on the beach. In the beach version, if you were on the sand, it was touch. But as soon as you went into the water where no out of bounds and anything went, which was usually meant flying tackles, it was great fun. The water cushioned the fall, and I don't think any of us ever got hurt doing this. It really was a blast. Plus, there was no armor to slow you down. My next encounter with contact sports came a couple of years later in high school when I went out for JV lacrosse team. The bedlam of first-year lacrosse is a sight to behold. Lacrosse is not a well-known game, so I'll say a few words in case you've never seen it. The game is played on a football field with 10 players on a team, 3 midfielders, 3 defensemen, 3 attack, and 3 goalie, and the goalie. The equipment consists of lightweight helmet, hockey, gloves, high-density foam shoulder pads, and pads to protect your arms and elbows. These, as well as the shoulder pads, are optional. The game is a hybrid between hockey, football, and basketball. The stick is used to be made of wood, leather, and a cat gut, and the ball is the size of a hard ball and made of hard rubber. The ball is thrown and caught with the stick. Players are not allowed to touch it with their hands. The goal is 6 feet wide by 6 feet high and has a circle around it called a crease, as in hockey, which offensive players can't cross over. It's a very fast game. Lots of contact. You can hit with your stick or your body. It was invented by the American Indians, who still play and are among the best players around. Interestingly, lacrosse, not hockey, is the national sport of Canada. The Indians would play for days at a time, and the field would span miles. It's said that there were fatalities back then in the good old days. Strategies resemble those used in basketball, in that many of the plays make use of picks, and the movement and the use of players are similar to both basketball and hockey. It's illegal to hit someone in the head, helmet, although it happens fairly often, sometimes on purpose and sometimes inadvertently. Sometimes the refs see it, sometimes they don't. Penalties are similar to hockey in that some penalties are spent in the penalty box and the offense and defense go into 1-man or 2-man up or down setups. There are fast breaks as in hockey and basketball, and the individual positions have specialized kinds of functions as in soccer. One of the things that distinguishes lacrosse from other contact sports is that it is legal to hit someone with your stick. It's very much part of the game. There are legal hits and illegal hits. That kind of sounds fun. Oops. Inner boy cannot play. Now, when you have a group of kids who don't squat about stick handling and setting up plays, teamwork, it's insane out there. I was tall and skinny the first year I played, and I hate the game intensely. Coach was really Well, let me put it this way, the man was not well. He would literally stand on the sideline during the game and scream, "Kill! Kill!" I kid you not. He was also the wrestling coach and a stocky little son of a bitch. Most of us were totally intimidated by this little dictator. I remember when he would yell my name out during a game. "Get in there, Weinstein," and my stomach would start doing flip-flops, butterflies in the gut. Hell, there were bats in there. The first year I liked just about everyone else out there. Didn't have the slightest idea what I was doing. The game was free-for-all. A very violent, almost all hitting and tackling, and no teamwork or finesse, and I think that Coach sadistically bathed in the glory of it all. As I said, I was skinny, had no stick, still, got my ass kicked around a lot, hated it immensely, so why in the world did I do it? There was something about doing a sport my brothers hadn't done. There was the violent contact aspect to satiate the pressure I felt to prove my manhood. Dad had been a lacrosse player in college. One uncle was an All-American lacrosse player, and his two sons were both fine players. I think one of them made All-American. Getting the picture now? Although I loathed the game the first year, believe it or not, I went out for the team again the following year. I felt driven by invisible forces, and although I was having intense back pains at the time, the pressure to play plus the shame of not going out for the team drove me to do it again. I had filled out some over the summer, and Dad and I worked out once in a while together. Actually, it was great. He'd have me run around him in a circle and quick stick with him. It was excellent for sharpening up my reflexes and good stick work practice, and he was a damn good teacher. I could see how much Dad enjoyed working with me in this way, and he was obviously pleased with my progress. For a kid who was starved for recognition from his father, this was a rare and welcome gift. I also used to play against a wall on my own, practicing for hours on end, determined to get better. By the time lacrosse season came around again, I had gained some influence, confidence, along with some weight, but I was still very scared of the game. About halfway through the season, I ended up in a cast from torn cartilage and ligaments in my knee. I went out for the team again the following year, my senior and final year of high school, but this time things were different. The caliber of play was dramatically different, and the coach was an honorable, decent human being. His name was Tony Piazza, and he soon became one of the strongest influences in my life up until that time. Tony's emphasis was on ethics, finesse, stickability, and teamwork. The team took precedence over the individual. Lacrosse was still a dirty game at high school level, and a lot of teams relied on brute force to win. Defensive men are the big boys in lacrosse, most of whom were football linemen staying in shape during the off-season. These, for the most part, were not nice people on the field, that is. So like most teams, we had our mix of small and quick average-sized endurance players and the big boys. During practice and workouts, Tony drilled and honed our skills. He would not tolerate dirty playing and made his ways known in a gentlemanly manner. None of the temper tantrums of coaches from the 2 years before. He spoke softly and engendered a tremendous amount of respect from his players. A good parallel is the contrast between Bill Walsh of the 1949ers and Mike Ditka of the Chicago Bears. Brains, control, and finesse versus vulgarity. There were occasional times when he pulled one over. There were times when he pulled one of our players for a cheap or dirty shot on the field. Because we were good with our sticks, we often intimidated and riled other teams. And when players are flustered, they blow whatever sense of timing they may have and their game deteriorates quickly. It's easy to sucker someone who's pissed off at you. So we were good, and as the game went on, most teams became more enraged and blew off whatever skills they had while they focused on trying to beat us up. I remember at halftime Tony saying to us, "Listen guys, I know what's going on out there, but I don't want you stooping to their level." And if we did, we got taken out. That's pretty incredible coaching and modeling. I learned a great deal that year, playing for Tony. More than anything else, I learned not to quit. There was nothing about him and the whole experience that instilled in me an attitude of refusing to give up, to want to push on. The other gift from that season was the meaning and experience of working together as a team. The whistle blows. Two strong men wrestle for possession of the ball. Our man wins and starts working the ball downfield to set up play with 3 attackmen. I am point attackman in front of the goal. One of the midfielders passes the ball to another attackman. Back it goes to the midfield. Then back and forth in the midfield. Our midfielders know I'm suckering my defensemen, and they're stalling, waiting for me to break into the clear. I run to my left to get the guy who is guarding me moving in that direction. It doesn't work. He doesn't fall for the feint. I plant my cleats into the grass and cut back sharply to the opposite direction. My defenseman isn't snookered. The other attackman rushes in to set up a block. We run toward each other at a top speed, my defenseman alongside me. Wham! My defender is down. The midfielders have been watching closely and the ball is driven to me as soon as I'm clear. I spin around. Now I'm one-on-one with the goalie. I deliberately stare at the upper right-hand corner of the goal, and the goalie's eyes follow mine as he tries to anticipate the direction of my shot. 2 quick steps toward him, and using the momentum of my body, I fire into the dirt at the lower left-hand corner. Suddenly he knows what's happening, and his foot shoots out a fraction of a second too late. The ball is moving too fast to see, but the net reacts from the impact. It's in. The adrenaline explodes inside me, and I am oblivious to having been struck hard by another defenseman rushing in to block my shot. The play worked perfectly. We had practiced it countless times until it was automatic, until we were a synchronized pattern of motion and intention playing together as a single entity. When I had scored, we had all scored. These guys, these strong-willed young men, had willingly bowed to a collective effort that surpassed an individual talent. Knowing your teammates' movements inside out becomes a transcendental experience of a sort, exhilarating, fulfilling, much more so than if you'd done it all yourself. Great. A coach occupies a high place in a boy's life. It is the one grand component of my arguably useless vocation. If they are lucky, good coaches can become the perfect, unobtainable fathers that young men dream about and rarely find in their own homes. Good coaches shape and exhort and urge. There is something beautiful about watching the process of sport. I have spent almost all the autumns of my life moving crowds of young boys across acres of divided grass. Beneath the sun of late August, I have listened to the chants of calisthenics, watching the initial clumsiness of overgrown boys and the eyes of small boys conquering their fear, and I have monitored the violence of blocking sleds and gang tackling. I can measure my life by the teams I have fielded, and remember my name every player I have ever coached. Patiently I have waited each year for that moment when I had merged all the skills and weaknesses of the boys placed in my care. I have watched for that miraculous synthesis. When it comes, I look around my field, and I look at my boys, and in a rush of creative omnipotence, I want to shout to the sun, "By God, I've created a team." I played lacrosse in college, and the game then was a very different experience. I enjoyed it, even though it is still frightening to me. Going into a game is a scary experience. The atmosphere in a locker room is intense before a game, and there is definitely a feeling of an impending battle. Once you're out there, your adrenaline takes over and you're in the flow. My second year, I suffered a hyperextension of my other knee and ended up in a cast for 2 or 3 months. Nevertheless, I went back and played again during the third and fourth years. I was playing attack, and the coach had designed a couple of plays to take advantage of my height. It was a kamikaze play that often worked. One of the other attackmen would come behind the goal with the ball, and I'd come across the crease line right in front of the goalie, which would be facing the attackman with the ball, and he'd have his back to me. The idea was to throw the ball over the net, over the goalie's stick, and I'd jump up and quick stick it in while I was on my way down, hopefully. The strategy was that by the time the goalie turned around, the ball was already in the net. He'd never even seen it. It worked pretty well, but it left me totally exposed, like football receivers who jump up for a pass. They're sitting ducks, to be nailed by 1 or 2 defensemen, which is usually what happened. Ah, what we do for points. We were back from spring break early. The lacrosse players, that is, to work double practices, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. This was excruciating stuff. We had a new player on the team. He looked old enough to me to be a coach himself. He was big and mean and very fucked up in the head. He had just come out of the Marines and was out to prove himself and out to impress the coach at my expense. This guy was a real dirty player, often stabbing me in the back with the end of his stick, illegal hits, the works. To get to the point, he beat me up every practice. The only satisfaction I ever got was one day in practice I snapped after he hit me late, and I spun around and smashed him in the head as hard as I could with my stick. Other players jumped in and separated us. After a few weeks of this, I was pretty badly racked up from the double workouts, strained muscles, Mr. Marines, etc. I was sitting down for lunch one day, and the only way I could sit was use my arms to lower myself slowly. My legs, knees, and ankles were hurting me so badly. Finally the day came when after one of these slow, painful, ridiculous descents, the total insanity of what was happening forced me back into sanity. I decided right then and there, that's it. I quit. I'm not doing this anymore. This is totally nuts. I handed in my equipment that afternoon. The coach never even asked me why. It's not easy to quit. At least it's not easy for me. There's pride and peer pressure. But my decision was so quick, strong, and final that I didn't feel any embarrassment about it. I was going to miss the guys and the fun and the exhilarating aspect of the game, but the pain and the damage were just too damn much. I have 2 regrets about playing lacrosse. One, I went into it for the wrong reasons. Several years ago, I had one of those realizations that stops you in your tracks. All of a sudden, I flashed on the symbolism of the name of the game, lacrosse, and saw how I had put myself on the cross to impress my father and my brothers, and how I had sacrificed myself, my body, for them. Today, I am still troubled by my knee problems, vestiges of violent sport that has taken its toll on me. For all the good I derived from the game, I'm sorry I did it. It's simply not worth the pain I live with, and I'm concerned about the pain that will be there tomorrow. If I could do it again, I wouldn't. The other regrets has to do with asking my dad not to come to our championships game in high school. I was afraid that I might not have a good game. I was afraid I'd try too hard with him there and blow it. As it happened, I had one of the best games of my career, and my dad never got to see me on the field. He never even saw me in the game. Dad would have been proud of his son. We could have bonded in a way that would have enriched our time together. And now that he's gone, and I'm a father, I recall my stupidity and its resulting sadness. I won't repeat this mistake with my daughter. No, know the feeling. State championship. Dad wasn't there. I tried to get him there. That's my story. Back to this guy's story. Men's Body and Intimate View by Patrick Riley. This is one. Over the years, I've worked with roughly 1,000 different people doing rolfing. Ron, compared to most athletic men, possesses a great amount of sensitivity in his body. This particular kind of sensitivity can be represented most vividly by a great cheetah bounding over the plains of Africa, his sinews in evidence with every move as he strides gracefully, yet with abandon seeking his prey. Nevertheless, for a moment, do you believe that he will fall in a hole, twist an ankle, or seek the wrong trail? He is invincible, and as if his program is preordained, controlled genetically. This is the kind of body sensitivity to which I refer. Discriminating selectivity, athletic prowess, and innate information that enables you to use your body more suitably. Many men, even those involved in serious athletics, do not possess it. Most often it seems that they have developed and used their bodies in machine-like fashion. Their bodies will carry them forth in a battle until they expire or are injured. Then they will seek someone to patch them up in hopes of being able to continue in their usual fashion. The cheetah is able to proceed at high speed in relentless pursuit of his prey. At the end of his quest, he will literally throw his body into the fracas, much like a football player. Yet he maintains a sense of his position in space at all times, so as not to subject himself to unnecessary injury. Certainly it is a quirk of our culture that often more adoration is given to the injured hero than to the athlete who is still in action. The injured cheetah is not of great assistance to his family's survival. During Ron's second session, tears and then great sobbing began to emanate as I worked on his ankle. Before committing himself totally to running, Ron was also a soccer player. After college, he played on a semi-pro team where he was the youngest and fastest man on the team. In order to keep their competitive edge over him, many of the older team members would kick or step on his ankles in order to slow him down. Wow, they used to do that to me too. Damn. As we worked on his ankles, memories of these painful experiences flooded into his awareness, permitting him to see why his ankles now felt weak and unstable, and why he was constantly worried that they would give out. Machismo often takes precedence over good common sense. The thrill of the game at 17 is a faint memory compared to the ever-present pain in the right knee at 40. Generally, the joy of using one's body vigorously and naturally is lost in the repeated efforts of pushing one's body to produce an exceptional result. With many people, running has been a way of regaining the cheetah-like freedom in the body. Take a look at the faces of the people crossing the finish line at a marathon. Notice the agony? It is rare to see a smiling face. There is a line of productive usage, and when that line is crossed, constant pain and bodily degradation replace natural athletic prowess as the operating mode. day, citizen, citizen, forge the stand up tall, let your dreams make your world. Stars are dancing in the morning rain. It's the beginning and the end of the day. I just gotta be free. Yeah, the stars are shining on me, ever shining liberty. I just gotta be free. Ever shining liberty. Stars are flowing from me to you. Dawn a new day, citizen, citizen. Forge the night into the day. I know through the day, oh, I know through the day. Stand up tall, let your dreams make your way. Rise up, make a brand new day. Ever shining liberty. We're all in the same place, only different. Ever shining liberty. We're all the same, only different. We're all in the same place. Ever shining liberty. The stars are shining on me. Do you hear what I say? As the sun shepherd goes into the moon. So all inside, ever shining liberty, all liberty. Stand up tall, let your dreams make your way. Dawn a new day, citizen, citizen, forge the night into
Riverline. Today we're going to do another book reading from The Eye of Spirit, Ken Wilber, Contemplating Art, page 134. Let me return to what art is finally all about. When I directly view, say, a great Van Gogh, I am reminded of what all superior art has in it. The capacity to simply take your breath away, to literally actually make you inwardly gasp, at least for the second or two when the art first hits you, or more accurately, first enters your being. You swoon a little bit. You are slightly stunned. You are open to perceptions that you had not seen before. Sometimes, of course, it is much quieter than that. The work seeps into your pores gently, and yet you are changed somehow. Maybe just a little, maybe a lot, maybe you are changed. No wonder that for the East and West alike, until just recent times, art was often associated with profound spiritual transformation. And I don't mean merely religious or iconographic art. Some of the great modern philosophers, Schelling to Schiller to Schopenhauer, have all pinpointed a major reason for great art's power to transcend. When we look at any beautiful object, natural or artistic, we suspend all other activity, and we are simply aware. We only want to contemplate the object. While we are in this contemplative state, we do not want anything from the object. We just want to contemplate it. We want it to never end. We don't want to eat it, or own it, or run from it, or alter it. We only want to look. We want to contemplate. We never want it to end. In that contemplative awareness, our basic awareness, we rest with the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. We are face to face with the calm, the eye in the center of the storm. We are not agitating to change things. We contemplate the object as it is. Great art has this power to grab your attention and suspend it. We stare sometimes, awestruck, sometimes silent, but we cease the restless movement that otherwise characterizes our every waking moment. It doesn't matter what the actual content of the art is. Not for this. Great art grabs you against your will and then suspends your will. You are ushered into a quiet clearing, free of desire, free of grasping, free of ego, free of all self-contraction. And through that opening or clearing in your own awareness may come flashing higher truths, subtler revelations, profound connections. For a moment, you might even touch eternity. Who can say otherwise? When time itself is suspended in the clearing that great art creates in your awareness. You just want to contemplate. You want it to never end. You forget past and future. You forget self and same. The noble Emerson. These roses under my window make no reference to former roses or to better ones. They are for what they are. They exist with God today. There is no time for them. There is simply the rose. It is perfect in every moment of its existence. But man postpones or remembers. He does not live in the present, but with reverted eye laments the past, or heedless of the riches that surround him, stands on tiptoe to foresee the future. He cannot be happy and strong until he too lives with nature in the present above him, above time. Great art suspends the reverted eye, the lamented past, the anticipated future. We enter into the timeless present. We are with God today, perfect in our manner and mode.
open in the riches and the glories of a realm that time forgot. That great art reminds us of not by its content, but by what it does in us, suspends the desire to be elsewhere, and thus it undoes the agitated grasping in the heart of the suffering self, and releases us, maybe for a second, maybe for a minute, maybe for all eternity, releases us from the coil of ourselves. That is exactly the state that great art pulls us into. No matter what the actual content of the art itself, bugs or Buddhas, landscapes or abstractions, it doesn't matter in the least. In this particular regard, from this particular context, great art is judged by its capacity to take your breath away, take yourself away, take time away, all at once. And whatever we mean by the word spirit, let's just say with Tillich that it involves for each of us our ultimate concern. It is that simple, awestruck moment when great art enters you and challenges you, that spirit shines in this world just a little more brightly than it did the moment before. Take it one step further. What if we could somehow manage to see everything in the entire universe as being exquisitely beautiful, like the finest piece of great art? What if we right now saw every single thing and event without exception as an object of extraordinary beauty? Why, we would be momentarily frozen in the face of that vision. All of our grasping and avoiding would come momentarily to rest. We would be released from the self-contraction and ushered into the choiceless contemplation of all that is. Just as a beautiful object or artwork momentarily suspends our will, so the contemplation of the universe as an object of beauty would open us to the choiceless awareness of that universe, not as it should be or might be or could be, but simply as it is. Could it then be possible, just possible, that when the beauty of all things without exception is perceived, we are actually standing directly in the eye of spirit, for which the entire cosmos is an object of beauty, just as it is, precisely because the entire cosmos is in fact the radiant art of spirit itself? In this extraordinary vision, the entire cosmos is the artwork of your own highest self in all its shining creativity, which is exactly why every object in the universe is in truth an object of radiant beauty when perceived with the eye of spirit. And conversely, if you could right here, right now, actually see every single thing and event in the entire universe as an object of sheer beauty, then you would of necessity be undone as ego and stand instead as spirit. You would want nothing from the cosmos at the moment except to contemplate its unending beauty and perfection. You would not want to run from the universe, or grasp it, or alter it, at all. That contemplative moment, you will neither fear nor hope, nor move at all. You will want nothing whatsoever except to witness it all. Contemplate it unendingly. You want it to never end. You are radically free of will, free from grasping, free from all meaning, motion, and commotion. You are a center of pure and clear awareness, saturated in its being by the utter beauty of everything it contemplates. Not a single particle of dust is excluded from this beauty. No object whatsoever, no matter how ugly or frightened or painful, not a single thing is excluded from this contemplative embrace. For each and every thing is radically, equally unending, the brilliant radiance of spirit.
When you behold the primordial beauty of every single thing in the universe, then you behold the glory of the cosmos in the eye of spirit, the eye of spirit, the radical I of I am, of the entire universe. You are fully to infinity, radiant with the light of 1,000 suns, and all is perfect just as it is, always and eternally. As you contemplate this, your greatest artwork, the entire cosmos, this thing of beauty, this object of unending joy and bliss, radiant in the heart of all that arises. Think of the most beautiful person you have ever seen. Think of the exact moment you looked into his or her eyes, and for all fleeting second you were paralyzed. You couldn't take your eyes off that vision. You stared, frozen in time, caught in that beauty. Now imagine that identical beauty radiating from every single thing in the entire universe, every rock, every plant, every animal, every cloud, every person, every object, every mountain, every stream, even the garbage dumps and broken dreams, every single one of them radiating that beauty. You are quietly frozen by the gentle beauty of everything that arises around you. You are released from grasping, released from time, released from avoidance, released altogether into the eye of spirit, where you can contemplate the unending beauty of the art that is the entire world. That all-pervading beauty is not an exercise in creative imagination. It is the actual structure of the universe. It is not something that you have to imagine, because it is the actual structure in all domains. If you remain in the eye of spirit, every object is an object of radiant beauty. If the doors of perception are cleansed, the entire cosmos is your lost and found beloved, the original face of primordial beauty, forever and endlessly forever, and in the face of that stunning beauty, you will completely swoon into your own death, never be seen or heard from again, except on the tender nights when the wind gently blows through the hills and the mountains, quietly calling your name.